Good Tuesday afternoon, everybody. My name is Crystal Holloman at the News 10 Plus Digital Desk, and we are going to take you to Flint in Genesee County, where Genesee County Prosecutor David Leyton is announcing charges in an accidental shooting of a 2-year-old girl. We're going to listen in right now.
Vetter, MSP. And it was Detective Ross and Detective Bailey who worked this case that resulted in what we're going to talk about here today. So everybody ready? All right. So my office has charged Michael Tolbert of Flint with multiple counts related to the shooting of a child. Let me read you the counts first so you have them. We've charged him with first-degree child abuse, which is a felony punishable by up to life in prison. We've charged him with felony firearm related to the child abuse count. We've charged him with a violation of the Michigan Safe Storage of Firearms law, which is a new law which we'll talk about shortly. We've charged him with a felony firearm count related to that violation. We've also charged him with being a felon in possession of a firearm, a felon in possession of ammunition, and lying to a police officer about a violent crime investigation. And each one of those counts, except the last one, has a felony firearm count attached to it. We've also given a fourth offender habitual notice. Background of this is as follows. On February 14th, the Flint Police Department was dispatched to Hurley Medical Center in reference to a shooting victim arriving by a personal vehicle. Upon the officer's arrival, the victim, a 28-month-year-old girl, had a gunshot wound to her head. Patrol officers made contact with the little girl's father, identified as Michael Tolbert, date of birth April 7th of 1979. He transported her to the hospital. A search warrant was then executed at the venue of this incident, 6010 Clover Lawn Drive in Flint. During the search, blood was observed on the floor of the living room, as well as blood on the couch near the front entry door. The blood appeared to be coming from the front bedroom of the home. Upon entering the bedroom, investigators observed blood and brain matter on the floor. The blood in the bedroom floor was directly next to a small, toddler-sized folding chair. There were 2 firearms located on the bed in this front bedroom. One firearm was a revolver, the other was a semi-automatic pistol. Upon examining the firearms, both were unsecured and loaded with live ammunition. The semi-automatic pistol had a live round in the chamber, as well as multiple live rounds in the magazine. The revolver had 1 fired casing and additional live ammunition inside of it. There were no gun locks or safes inside of this front bedroom. Upon examining the ceiling of the front bedroom, investigators observed a single bullet hole in the drywall ceiling. Per Hurley Medical staff, the bullet entered the right eye of the little girl and exited through the rear of her skull. Doctors have said that she will lose her right eye at best, and she remains in critical condition this afternoon. I want to thank the Michigan State Police and the City of Flint Police Department for their thorough investigation of this. I also want to make note that this is the first case in Michigan where an individual has been charged with violating the firearm safe storage law. The law, which was sponsored by Senator McDonald-Rivet, who will speak shortly, went into effect 1 week ago today. This incident occurred the very next day. Why this is so important is we've charged child abuse in the first degree, which is a life felony. In order to prove that beyond a reasonable doubt in a court of law, we have to prove as prosecutors that the defendant did knowingly or intentionally cause the serious physical harm to the child. And proving something happened knowingly and intentionally is a steep hill for a prosecutor in 2024. Thanks to this law, this is what we have to prove as to Mr. Tolbert's conduct, that he did store or leave a firearm unintended on premises under his or her control when he knew or reasonably should have known that a minor was or was likely to be present on the premises, and did fail to store the firearm in a locked box or container, and or keep the firearm unloaded and lock the firearm with a locking device that is properly engaged to render the firearm inoperable by any individual other than the owner or an authorized user. And that as a result, a minor obtained the firearm, discharged it, and inflicted serious impairment of a body function upon the minor. That is a much more straightforward situation than the child abuse charge. So I'd like to ask Senator McDonald-Rivet for her comments at this point, and I'd like to thank her for sponsoring this legislation that allows us to at least seek justice for the little girl. Senator?
Thank you, Prosecutor Leyton. We have reached a place in this country that the #1 cause of death of children is gun violence. Not car accidents, not cancer, gun violence. I have to say that when I introduced this legislation, it was my hope that it would never be used. Right now in the United States, we average 1 unintentional shooting of a child every day. Now that we have this in place, it was our goal to be able to give prosecutors tools, because with this right comes an extraordinary responsibility. And when you don't honor that responsibility, there need to be criminal penalties. I did not ever dream that within days of the law going into effect, we would need it. But here we are. So I'm hopeful that these prosecutions and that as we raise awareness in the public about the importance of safe storage, that we will need to use this less and less. But right now, I am glad that we were able to put a tool in prosecutors' hands. Thank you.
Captain Greg Marenko runs the region for Michigan State Police, and he's presently overseeing the Flint Post. So, Captain, I want to thank you and your folks for an excellent investigation, please.
Thank you, Prosecutor Leyton. Good afternoon, everybody. First and foremost, we continue to hold this injured child and her family in our thoughts and prayers. The Michigan State Police remain committed to creating and maintaining safe environments for all of our citizens. It saddens us to speak about the tragic incident, which was a completely preventable one, that left an innocent child gravely injured. Please do your part to ensure that guns in your home are secured and stored properly. We don't want this tragedy to happen to another family. Gun locks are available for free at the Flint Post down the road from here. As a gun owner, you are responsible for the safe use and storage of your firearm. Please know that it only takes a moment for an incident like this to happen. So, thank you.
Thank you, Captain. Questions?
Prosecutor Leyton, when was this suspect arrested?
They went to the scene and they were able to find this gentleman, first of all, at the Hurley Medical Center. And then there was some discussion between him and the investigators, and he ended up back at the Flint Police Department.
Why did it take so long for charges to be announced?
Actually, it didn't. We charged this over the weekend. He's already been arraigned. What took longer was for me to pull together this news conference. And I wanted to do it because of the new law and that it went into effect, and that this is the first case in the state where we're actually using the law. And as the senator said, I didn't expect it to happen so fast, but sadly it did. And I'm glad the law's on the books. I'm sad that the incident occurred.
Could you confirm the spelling of the defendant's last name?
Sure. Tolbert.
Is there anyone else that you're looking at in this investigation who might face possible charges?
Not at this time, but as you know, all investigations remain open. If additional information comes in, we take a look at it, determine if there's probable cause that a crime was committed, and then we might add charges. But at this particular time, the answer is no. James?
There is a GoFundMe for this little girl, apparently. Can you name the victim here? Can you give us her name?
Well, I know it's already out there. I normally don't do that, but since it's already out there, I certainly think I can do that. Her name is Skye McBride. Skye is S-K-Y-E, McBride, M-C-B-R-I-D-E. Her date of birth is 10/15 of 21.
And that's why I was following up with that question. The GoFundMe listed her at 3, but you obviously gave us a birth date there, so we can do the math for ourselves. So,
You can check my math, too.
yeah.
Were there other children in the home when this happened? Do you know?
Not that I'm aware of. Anybody else?
And
Yeah.
could you just talk a little bit about, do you think that the new storage law gives you as a prosecutor a new avenue to file charges in addition to charges under the storage law, given that it sort of creates this new legal duty for adults?
Yeah, I mean, that's why this is such an important law, because as I mentioned, it's not easy to convince a jury beyond a reasonable doubt these days. And in the child abuse case, we have to show knowingly did something. Here, we just have actual specific elements that we can show. Had a gun, didn't store it properly, child was in the home, he was in charge of the child got her hands on the gun, and something bad happened. So yes, it's a very useful tool for prosecutors.
And you said it was the revolver that was actually fired?
That's our understanding.
And with safe storage law, that's 20, if this, God forbid, this child dies, that's 20-year felony, or is that more severe?
You know, it goes up in the penalty with 15-year, I think.
Okay, that's right, thank you.
And we would also, God forbid that happens, but we would also be in a position where we would probably add a count of involuntary manslaughter, which is also a 15-year penalty.
Can you say at this stage what specific sentence you're seeking?
Sentencing is the purview of the judge. I would tell you that at this point in time, we have a maximum penalty of life in prison. There are sentencing guidelines in Michigan. Judges apply those guidelines, although they're not mandatory, they are advisory. And I really haven't looked at the guidelines yet in this particular case. But I usually leave the sentencings up to the judge. We're not there yet. This is just as a reminder. This man is innocent until proven guilty in a court of law, and that's my obligation to bring the case before the court to prove it at the appropriate time.
He's facing a charge of lying to a peace officer there. Can you tell us any circumstances surrounding the lying part of this?
I'm going to have to ask you to come to the preliminary examination for that, because under the Michigan Rules of Professional Conduct that govern prosecutors, we can't talk about statements that the defendant may or may not have made. But you can glean from the fact that we've charged him that something did happen here.
Are gun locks available at Michigan State Police Post as well as Flint PD?
You want to talk a little more about that?
I'm sorry?
Are gun locks available for people to walk into the police department and say, I need a gun lock?
I believe so.
There are free gun locks available at all state police posts throughout the state. If they are out at the time, there are more on order, and we will make them available to anybody that requests them.
I just got one question for Senator McDonald Rivet, too, if you wouldn't mind heading up there. What was your reaction, or how did you feel, dumb question sometimes, but how did you feel, like you said, days after this law being passed, that this little girl finds herself in this situation right now?
Devastated. Devastated. You know, most folks don't. I have 6 of my own kids. Anytime a child is harmed, it's a tragedy. And honestly, I worry about a day that we don't feel devastated when this happens. When we become numb to it, we have a really big issue. But, you know, I introduced this bill because we have to do something. We have to start stemming this tide of what gun violence is doing to our kids. But it's always the hope that we don't have to rely on them. And the idea that we are using it, that Prosecutor Leyton is using this within days of its effective day, tells you that we have a real problem, and we really need to work together to fix it.
Any other questions?
I am brand new to Michigan, so could you just explain?
Welcome.
Thank you. Could you just clarify for me, what is a felony firearm that comes along with the charges? Is that like a sentence enhancer?
It's yes, sort of. It's a separate felony crime, which says that the person who committed the felony possessed a firearm during the commission of the felony. It's punishable by 2 years that are mandatory and consecutive to any other sentence the judge gives for the other counts that are charged. Does that help?
It does.
Okay.
Was there any bond issued in this case?
I know he was arraigned. Do we know what his, anybody know what his bond was? Probably can check on the county computer. Thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate you covering this.
All right, that was Genesee County Prosecutor David Leyton, along with some members of Michigan State Police and Senator McDonald, I believe.
Yes, Kristen McDonald Rivet.
And they are announcing charges related to the accidental shooting of a 2-year-old girl in Flint. Right now, she is expected to survive, but she may lose her
Critical
eye.
condition, yes, but she may lose her right eye as a result of that injury.
So Riley Connell here, she's working on this story for our over 90 minutes of news later on today, looking at our notes. What else can you tell us out of this press conference?
Well, let's go over the charges. They listed a couple of charges that this Flint man is being charged with. His name is Michael Tolbert. It was first communicated that he may be the father of this child that was injured, but that was not clearly confirmed in the press conference. But we'll talk about the charges, the first of those being a first-degree charge of child abuse, which is up to a life sentence, and that comes with a felony firearm charge attached as well. The second charge in that is violation of Michigan's new safe storage law, which was a big centerpiece of this press conference as well, and the reason they had the senator present. This law went into effect almost a week ago, and now these are the first criminal charges being brought down because of that safe storage law and the violation of that law. So there is a charge for that, and that comes with a felony firearm charge as well attached to it automatically. The third charge in this is felon in possession of a firearm and ammunition. So it was communicated that Michael Tolbert was had some previous offenses as well, and those each come with a felony firearm charge as well. So there's a lot to go over here with all of these different charges. Something that was certainly brought to attention by the prosecutor and by Senator McDonald Rivet was the role of the safe storage law being a possible point of proof beyond a reasonable doubt for child abuse charges. So not only did they give an explanation of this tragic situation, this unfortunate injury of this 2-year-old girl, but they talked about the role that safe storage could play in proving, a case of child abuse. So that really did take precedent in their conversation about this as well. And that child was also identified in the press conference as well as Sky McBride, and she is just under 2 years old, I believe, 28 months.
Yes.
28 months. So really just a terrible.
Just over 2 years old.
Just over 2 years old, that's right.
Just over 2 years old. And one thing they were really pushing there is that gun locks are available and they are free, and you can just walk in and get one at every MSP post in the state. And one of the MSP officers, I believe, was really pushing, as a gun owner, it is your responsibility to keep these locked up. And they were saying just a week ago, we saw these gun laws go into effect, and McDonald was saying she's a mother of 6, and at no point did she think she would be having to use this law already.
Believe she even said she didn't dream that a week after it being, you know, put into action that they would have to use it, and they were hoping that this law would, you know, prevent people from having to face criminal charges. And I actually spoke with an advocate from End Gun Violence Michigan just a short time before the press conference, who said some very similar things too, that the purpose of this law is to encourage people to lock up their guns so that there don't have to be any criminal charges coming down. So that was something being highlighted by that group as well. And obviously a lot to stomach here, and just a really tragic and terrible case. We're going to do a breakdown of everything that was talked about in the press conference and touching on these things again coming up on News 10 at 6. So we are going to go through those charges and the potential time that Michael Tolbert might be facing because of this.
And Prosecutor Leyton, towards the end there, he did say the charges could be added should, unfortunately, this little girl not make it through this injury, where there could be involuntary manslaughter charges brought on, which is even more. And I don't have my map up right now, but for those wondering, this happened in Flint, kind of in the northeastern block of Pearson Road and Clio Road. So that is on the northern end of Flint. We just looked up the address. It's kind of between Flint and Beecher, just to the west, or I'm sorry, the east of I-75, between I-75 and 475. But it was at a home, and the police responded actually to the hospital, not the
hospital. Yeah, the hospital where Sky McBride was taken to in a private vehicle, I believe they said. So police came there first, and then immediately moved on to the address to look for, you know, signs of the incident, proof of the incident. We won't dive too deeply into the extent of the injury, but they did describe the injuries that this young child is facing. And I think Crystal said she will be losing her right eye.
At the very least. The staff at Hurley Medical Center in Flint thinks that she will at the very least lose an eye at 2 years old. Just making sure we have any questions. Lisa said good, as he should be. I mean, we're still looking at a couple more charges that he could be faced. This isn't all of them. These are just the initial charges. And then somewhat tied to that, but not exactly. Speaking of gun violence and children being injured, we're going to go to Detroit in just a moment. We're waiting. At any moment now, they will be taking the podium, Detroit Police Chief White. This follows overnight, I believe, shooting in Detroit where an 11-year-old girl was sleeping in a home and was hit by gunfire and shot in the head. So this is in Detroit. We just went from Flint to Detroit, but this is really a statewide issue. And like they said, gun locks are available for free at Michigan State Police Post. So Riley, I'm going to go ahead and let you go so you can get working on this story.
Absolutely.
And we'll keep an eye here on Detroit, where we are expecting Police Chief White to give an update on that 11-year-old girl who was shot. I'm actually going to link that story in our chat here as well. Thank you, Riley.
Yeah, no problem. Here's this for you.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Let me start off by saying my thoughts and prayers are with 11-year-old Lamara Glenn and her family. She was tragically shot in the head around 4 a.m. this morning, and she remains in critical condition. The senseless violence is certainly unacceptable. I'm tired of reporting stories like this. We're fed up with these stories. We pursue those who victimize our community. We relentlessly pursue those who cowardly attack our children. This 11-year-old was doing what we want 11-year-olds to do, is that being at home, comfortably sleeping in her home, when these folks decided to make an adult problem a child's problem, and that's just completely unacceptable. I want to thank our officers. When this case hit at 4 a.m., many of them did not go home until early this afternoon, and some, as my understanding, are still at work pursuing these suspects. Here's what we know right now. We have a situation where 23 rounds were fired into the home. One of those rounds, at least one of those rounds, struck little Lamara in the head. As I indicated, she's in a local hospital in critical condition, extremely critical condition. The officers that initiated this investigation were able to quickly relay information through our real-time crime center. Our investigators, members of the 7th Precinct, have been working again tirelessly on this case. We have 4 suspects in custody. One suspect is 18, one's 19, one is 20, and I believe the 23 is the 4th suspect. We've recovered 1 weapon and 1 facsimile firearm. The weapon that we have recovered, we believe, is in fact a weapon that was used tragically that struck little Miss Lamar Glenn. As you can imagine, that this case is wide open. The investigation continues. We're confident in our suspects, but we have a lot of work to do. So I won't have a lot of detailed information to provide you, but I will share with you during the Q&A what I can. With that, I'm going to bring up Commander Decker to just provide some additional highlights to the case. Commander.
Thank you, sir. Like Chief said, it's very early in the investigation. There's a lot of work going on, a lot of work from the precinct, a lot of work from our commercial auto theft units, our tactical service unit, our Homeland Security partners actually flew a helicopter on here. And just like we always do, something this tragic happens, everybody rallies up, and hopefully we'll put an end to this particular crime and a whole lot of other crimes going on. I don't believe the chief mentioned, but unfortunately we have a rash of stolen cars going on, businesses, dealerships being broken into, vehicles taken, and unfortunately it looks like that has progressed from just stolen crimes into violent crime. Fortunately, the vehicle used in this was a stolen car taken off one of our dealerships, and now we're here today. How far would you like to go? Okay, thanks, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, with that, we will take any questions.
Do we believe it was 4 shooters?
We believe that those 4 people have something to do with the shooting. We know we have more than 1 shooter, but we're confident in the 4 are all tied to this very sad case.
Chief, was there something in December that was similar with this house? Is there a connection?
Yeah, we're looking at it, as the AC mentioned this morning. We were there not long ago, late last year, on a same type of shooting. No one was injured there at that time, but we've been there before. This is not the first time.
Are you looking for anyone else?
Yeah, we are. The investigation is still active. We've got a number of activities going on right now to bring another suspect into custody. We're looking at a lot of different pieces of evidence, but we're confident in the 4 that we have.
Neighbors say that they heard gunshots at 10:30 p.m. as well. Have you seen anything, or have the suspect said anything?
Our investigators may have that. I was not briefed on that. I was focused on, quite frankly, getting these suspects off the street and this child.
How many people were in the house at the time of the shooting, and who are they?
Yeah, well, as the AC mentioned so eloquently earlier, it was every 15 at one point, 1 at one point, and a handful at another point. So they're still noodling through that right now. We're confident it was more than 1. We don't know if it was as many as 15. You know, everybody's got a different memory of how many were inside and whether or not they were, but we're working through that right now.
Was it all related?
They're not all related.
How does car theft play into the motive?
Yeah, so we're working a very interesting car theft ring involving, which we were already working. And we were looking at a couple of people. One was taken into custody yesterday. Actually, a couple were taken into custody yesterday and one late last night. It's early, but we have tied a couple of the vehicles in that ring to this incident and another incident. This case has a lot of different layers to it, and we're confident that we're going to be able to close not only this homicide, but this non-fatal shooting, but another homicide with this investigation, because 2 of the vehicles that were recovered at those scenes are tied to the auto theft ring. One of the suspects in the auto theft ring that we're looking at is tied to a homicide, and we believe, we're confident in this non-fatal shooting.
Chief, forgive me if you said as I was taking some pictures, but is there a particular motive or person that they were targeting that you know of that prompted this?
Well, you know, the investigators, they will be briefing me on that later. Obviously, we know we've got some group activity, and we believe that there's some conflict between 2 groups, but it's cowardly to bring in a child to whatever adult problems you're having with another group. You know, when you are shooting 11-year-old little girls in their home where they should have some degree of safety, that's a problem not only for the police department, that's a problem for our community. And it's outrageous, and we're just not going to tolerate it. You know, and we're going to do everything we can to get every single one of them off the street. And like I said, we've got 4, and we're looking for 1 more, and we're very confident that he will be in custody before the day's over.
Are you able to share at all what led you to these 4 individuals?
Well, as the commander indicated, he and his team, and this lieutenant here, who I'm going to put on the spot and let come up and talk a little bit, because it's his incredible work that keyed in on this auto theft ring. One of the suspects he locked up a while ago. We won't be giving you that name. He's a juvenile, but he was able to tie back to some connections that he had, and that really for us is what broke the case. But they're continuing to work. I mean, they're telling me the work that they're doing, it's the officers that are doing the work behind the scenes. Our federal partners, as the commander indicated, you know, we've got helicopters up. We've got a lot of resources tied to this. This is a baby. And those relationships are paying dividends, having those local, state, and federal partnerships. So, but Lieutenant, I'm going to put you on the spot. Why don't you come up and give a quick overview of your investigation?
Thank you, sir. Lieutenant Dunning. So as the chief stated, we've been out since early this morning, since 4:45 a.m. We had all resources on deck, including all our federal partners, in conjunction to get the persons that was responsible for this shooting in custody. There's a lot of intelligence work that's gathered to this. There's a lot of data that we have gathered over the past couple of days. And as the chief stated, this wasn't something that was new to us. We were on this case from the beginning, and we're still actively working the case till the end of it.
Thank you.
2 more questions, Chief.
All right.
Chief, real quick, just an update on Kenosee Harris and where that search stands.
Yeah, on Kenosee, that's another really big case. We did a search of an area. I'm sure everybody's aware of that over the weekend. Thank goodness we didn't find her, but we want to find her. Where we were looking, we weren't going to find her in the condition that we're hopeful to find her in, and that's alive. We are still working the case. We just met on this case about a half hour, 45 minutes ago. We got a lot going on, and we are not losing sight of this case at all. Investigators are working. One of our very best detectives in our missing squad is working on this case, and she is relentless. She was asked earlier if she's gotten any sleep. She said, I wake up every 2 hours thinking about this case. So we're doing everything we possibly can. We need the community's help. Anybody that has seen her, her friends, anybody that's keeping any secrets, as the hours turn to days, things get a little bit more concerning for us as to whether or not she's going to be found in the way that we want her found. So we need something. We need a break in this case. No arrests yet. Suspects are being talked to, and we'll have more to announce on that a little bit later. But we're going to exhaust everything geared toward bringing her home alive. And what we're hopeful of is that she's with one of her friends somewhere, maybe not even in the city of Detroit or in the state of Michigan, and you know, that she's just waiting to hear from somebody to come home. But again, as the time goes, we're starting to be a little bit more concerned. But we are working this case relentlessly as well.
Chief, on that other homicide, backing up, on the other homicide that you think may be connected to this car ring, any details about that, like in terms of when it happened, that kind of thing?
Yeah, a couple nights ago, A.C. Fitzgerald, when was that?
Yeah, it was last week, Mac and Balfour. Friday morning, was it early Friday morning, right? Male victim.
Male victim. Young, late teens, I believe.
Correct. Yeah, 17.
All right, thank you very much, Chief.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
All right, and that was the second of our two back-to-back live streams regarding gun violence where a child or a minor was shot. The first one we brought you was out of Flint, where a 2-year-old got a hold of a gun in a home on the north end of Flint around the intersection of Clio Road and Pearson Road and shot herself in the head. She is at Hurley Medical Center. Officials at Hurley Medical Center say she may lose her right eye, but right now she's listed in critical condition. Then we just heard from Detroit Police Chief James White about an 11-year-old who was shot and is also listed in critical condition. They have no suspects, but they are talking to some people and they're asking for the community's help in this investigation. Our Riley Connell will have more on the incident out of Flint. We're also talking to a couple other people about gun safety laws and how they went into effect just last week. And now 2 children, 2 minors have been shot, both in the head. Both are in critical condition, one in Detroit and one in Flint. We have all the latest on our website, WILX.com, and we will have more in about 45 minutes on 90 minutes of news starting with with News 10 at 5 o'clock. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you online.